This is Rebuilders, the leaders we need for the decade ahead. Here's your host, Paul Shoemaker.
So it's great today on Rebuilders to welcome another leader today. Her name is Erica Valliant, and we're going to hear more about her story in a minute. It's very unique. I want to start, Erica, by just welcoming you to the Rebuilders podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So question number one, as you look at the decade from where you sit, what do you think are the one or two personal leadership attributes that we're going to need most in the world of social and community change?
I think the one or two that we're going to need the most are going to be really the ability to step back and take a look at the whole picture and figure out, what's the best point of entry for you, or the places where you can affect change, or the places where you can help other people who are passionate about, certain things, step into the work so they can start to affect the change that needs to happen.
Yep. So I think that's very relevant. I'm guessing to what you did today. Your professional title says Whole Family Systems Manager at People Serving People. So can you tell us just a little bit about what that organization is? And then what is your role and what do you do at that organization?
Yeah, so People Serving People is a family shelter. It's the largest family shelter in Minneapolis. What I do there is I'm in charge of the Whole Family Systems project, which is a 5-year DHS-funded project where we get to pilot kind of 2 generational programs. For my particular focus, what I'm focusing on is our 2 goals. Actually, the first one is to reduce the recurrence of homelessness. Okay. So we want to reduce the number of times that we see people and families coming back into the shelter or, becoming homeless again. And then our second goal, because we are also really focused on early learning, we have 2 early learning centers, one that focuses on the general public, and then we have one that's specifically for our shelter residents. And that goal is really to look at the early learning curriculum that we have in our program and also the landscape and, figure out what's the best way to create a more multicultural focused kind of education curriculum for young scholars. So 0 to 5 years old.
Now you know what Erica does. So now what I want you to listen for is the kind of leader she is in place. And I want to emphasize the word leader. Don't hear her as just an employee or a social worker or a mom. She is the kind of person that I think needs to redefine and reset our expectations of what a leader is. So as you continue to listen, hear the range of experiences she combines and where she is today and how powerful and effective that would make her as a leader. A lot of important work. So of all the folks I talked to before I wrote the book, Erica, you're one of the most unique leaders I talked to. You have an unconventional journey, wasn't on a straight line, easy line. How did you end up in this role? How did you get here in 2021? What sort of led you to where you are?
So I guess it's a combination of a lot of different experiences, but more recently, it was when I became homeless after I lost my job. And I thought it was going to be easy to get another one because I had a Series 7, I was licensed, and it just didn't work out that way.
Right.
So, eventually I had to let the school know because I was living between family members and moving around a lot and had everything in my car with my kids, and they were either being late for school or missing school or didn't have their uniform. So, one day I just had to break down and say, to the school staff, like, look, this is what's going on. I'm trying my best. And at the time, there was a culture and wellness center in the school. that my kids go to because their school is a part of the St. Paul Promise Neighborhood
Right.
Partnership.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Culture and Wellness Center is like a culturally relevant like hub in the school. And then there are elders who work there. And I'm talking to the elder, and she told me about a housing program called Homework Starts with Home. And I applied for it. It took a few months before I got into it. But once I did get into it, I met another elder, Elder Pam, and she introduced me to Parent Council, which is a group of parents who had also experienced homelessness, who had also gone through that housing program, which was a rental assistance pilot program. And they were doing continuous advocacy work at the Capitol, writing letters, doing legislative visits, learning how bills are made, following the bill, especially that particular bill, through the legislative process. So I started to do that kind of work with them. And then, people started to see like the power of having parents' voices in the room or community members' voices in the room who have actually experienced the things that you are writing this legislation for. And we started to get invited to speak to new hires at the county or county leadership, just different things. And, through that, my network kind of started to grow. People were like, oh, you're really awesome. I'm like, thank you. There are lots of awesome people, but
you know some stuff.
Yeah. But the problem a lot of times is that people like me who have experienced something, they usually are not in that room when decisions are being made. And it just so happened that, with this particular parent group, the leadership of the St. Paul Promise Neighborhood Partnership at that time, he was inviting us into these spaces. So he would invite us into a funders meeting. He would invite us into a meeting with the county's leadership. We were invited and encouraged to join them when they were having meetings with legislators. So we can tell you like how this is affecting us, why it's really important, what it's really like when you're in this situation and trying to get out and can't, right? The effect that it's having on your kids in that particular situation, but any situation, really.
Yep. And that's incredible preparation for being the whole family systems manager doing what you're doing today, right?
Yeah, it really is. Because I've experienced homelessness actually more than one time, a few times as a child. And then, later on as an adult with my own kids.
Just a quick note here, because Erica's words speak for themselves. But when you think about how power happens, and that's part of leadership, and the kind of people that are in the room and not in the room, and think about how she talks about people like her being in the room when power happens. We need a book full of leaders like her for the future. So one of the things you said to me in the book, and it definitely connects to what you just said, is in your sort of work, you are committed to making sure parents see and exercise their power from their position and place. Can you just amplify a little bit what that means?
Yeah. So, what that really means is that we all have power, right? All of us, every single person. And a lot of times parents feel like they don't have any power, when it comes to decision making, whether it be around the curriculum, whether it be around policies within the school, whether it be around, a state level policy. And it's really just about, talking to people, educating them, bringing them along with you so that they can see that, you have the power to make change. Even something as small as a phone call or an email or just showing up at a meeting, being another supporter, even if you don't speak out, right? That speaks power to your position or the position of the group that you're with. And just knowing that it's okay if you were able to show up and rally and speak out, and now all you can do is make a phone call every now and then. Or now all you can do is invite other people to do it because your capacity as a parent has changed for whatever reason. Maybe you got a new job, a new baby, who knows? Parents have a lot of times really, their capacity to really fluctuates based on life. So, that's just one thing that's really important to understand that I always tell people about, because when they see the power of parents being in the room and speaking, they're like, oh, this is awesome. We want parents to do this. We want them to do that. We want them in this place. We want them in that space. I'm like, that's awesome too. But, make sure your expectations are realistic. Parents' capacities are not static. Number one. Number two, 9 times out of 10, they're not getting paid to do the work. You are. But usually they're not paying the parents to do the work, and they're doing, and that's work, right? So that's what I really mean, is just like helping parents realize that they do have power, and that it's okay that, your level of engagement with any particular thing changes with your capacity, with your life, but understanding that whatever the little thing is that you can do is a powerful thing, right?
Yep. That's awesome. In our conversation so far, you've already described a few of your experiences. You have such a wide range of experiences throughout your life, some good, some hard, everything in between. What's your sense of how all of that range of experience sort of prepared you to be the leader that you are today, not just in your role at PSP, but sort of as a community leader? How did all that inform or sort of roll up into the kind of leader you are right now?
I think that all the experiences that I have allow me to have a lot of different perspectives and kind of take steps back to look at things through each different perspective and try to figure out, like why, like what's going on when they're clashing, or when they're just meeting and not, we're not getting to the root of something, or we're not able to make something work the way it needs to work. And, some of that comes from too, like being in large corporations and, having those days where those times where the different departments finally decide to talk to each other. Everybody's working in silos, and, this department is backlogged, and they're like, why do they do this? This is weird. It's just making us work 5 extra hours. And then the other department is like, we didn't know it was a problem. We just do it like this because whatever. But they never talk.
Yeah.
Right.
Never communicate.
And, a lot of it is just really being able to step back and look at different perspectives, share different perspectives, try to bring other people back so that they can also look too and share. And then, seeking out different perspectives or ideas or voices, right, that may not be at the table, in the room, that are likely important to the work that you're doing.
That is all so unique and so powerful, Erica. Through all these experiences in organizations, have there been any particular people or role models or examples for you along the way that where you sort of looked to, or that you felt like you learned more from than someone else? Anybody? Was a particular mentor or role model for you?
I don't know. I feel like that's kind of a hard question for me, because I feel like I learned from so many people.
Right.
And I pick up different things from different people, and I get a lot of support from different people in the communities, and just like, advice, or just like space to talk through things. I think that my biggest influence is my mom, even though she passed early when I was 14, I believe, in 1995. I just thought she was so smart and just strong and imperfect, but at the same time, I just thought she was awesome. She always made time for us. She always taught me things. She always took me places with her. She always told me to, and people might take this different ways, but she always told me, like, if I didn't like something, she was like, well, suck it up, because, this is what it is. And that's kind of how I get myself through it. Because for me, that's me saying to myself, or her saying to me, okay, gather yourself, figure out what you need to do, and do it. Right. Yep. After you have your pity party, or after you, depending on what it is, like, pull yourself out of grief for whatever it is. Figure out what steps. It might be that you need to figure out what steps you need to take to do that. You might need to get help with that. You might need counseling. You might just need some additional supports, but figure out how to get yourself up out of this place and what you need to do to get to where you need to be, and then take that first step.
Yeah. I can't think of a better role model or mentor than your mom. So another important thing you said to me in the book was, how can we infiltrate the places where change needs to happen if the people at the table don't have those experiences? And I have some sense of what that means, but for somebody listening that doesn't spend time in the work like you do, can you explain to us a little bit more what that means?
Yeah, that kind of relates to what I was talking about earlier, but what that really means is if you're creating programs for people, or if you're creating policies that affect people, but there's nobody in the room who has experience with that thing, right? Or nobody in the room who that's actually going to affect. How do you even begin to know that you're doing the right thing or the best thing, or whether or not this is going to cause harm, if you don't have anybody that's been there to bounce it off of, right? They always say, like, one of the sayings in the world, one of the famous sayings is, in order to get where you're going, you got to know where you've been, right? Something like that. And that's similar to, like, in order to get to something that's going to work for the people, you got to have the people that's been affected in the room. Because otherwise you just guessing. You're making assumptions. You probably are going off of biases and stereotypes, which is never good, right? But that's what ends up happening. And that's why, I think it's so important for parents, not only parents, but anybody who's being affected by policies or programming or anything that, affects your day-to-day life. You need to be paying attention to what's going on. You need to show up. You have power. What you say means something.
And when I hear you say that, we know that rooms where there's power and there's policies that are made so often do not have those kinds of folks at the table. I just think that's such a simple and a powerful idea. Two things I just want to emphasize here. One, if you looked at her LinkedIn and the range and breadth and depth of experiences she has, they are as significant and cross-sector as just about any leader you'd want to find. And the second thing is when she talks about who's in the room, think about this like a company or a private sector company. And if they had meetings about direction and strategy, and they, for example, didn't have the customer in the room or didn't have the customer in mind, that would just be nonsense. That'd be fatal. So she brings to mind a key strategic concept that's probably second nature in the private sector, and it needs to be second nature in our social and our community change across all sectors. When we were talking this morning, you were describing some work you're doing right now, and what I wrote down was a project that's trying to regionalize work across counties. And if somebody's been listening, they halfway know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Yeah.
That project, how has everything you've done and you've described to us so far, how does that inform how you do this work to try to bring counties together in a regional way? Not easy.
It's definitely not easy. And there's a lot of kind of, I guess, competing goals, right? And competing ideas of what is, I guess, like what's most important right now. So like when we're talking about homelessness or the lack of affordable housing, you may have counties that are just at some point, focused on a certain group. Like we need to get the veterans, all housed, or we need to get the youth all housed, or we need to get, whatever group it is. And it's all kinds of different reasons why that happens. Or there's also the issue of funding, right? So the one thing that I think they really need to do first is come to an agreement on what equity looks like between the counties. Like, what does it look like to do this work in an equitable way between the counties in the region? And they have to agree on that, right? So that there's not all the disagreements about which county has more funding or which county has maybe more sway because they have more funding, because they have more people, right? Once they can agree on, what equity looks like between them, and then agree to like move like with that in mind, I think it'll be a lot easier to do some regionalized work so that people who are, experiencing homelessness or experiencing a really hard time finding housing or affording housing because there's not enough affordable housing, right, are not negatively affected by red tape and policy that puts a real like hard line on what you can or cannot access because of what county you live in. Because some people, especially where I am in St. Paul and Minneapolis, there are people who work in one county and live in another one. Or, the counties are like a couple of blocks apart.
Right.
And so it's really a lot to tackle. But I think the first thing is to really just agree on what equity looks like to the region, right? All the counties as a region, and agree on that. And then that'll help them move past some of those like hurdles that have to do with finance or I guess power dynamics, right?
Have that common vision. So 1 or 2 more questions. You have had such a range of experiences, Erica. If you were talking to an emerging young leader today, or if you were could go back and talk to the 20-something version of yourself, are there 1 or 2 pieces of leadership advice you'd give somebody at that sort of phase of the game that you think would help them be a more effective emerging leader?
I think my best advice is what you hear a lot is to be yourself, be true to yourself, bring your whole self into the space, right? Don't leave any part of you out. And, expect challenges and lean into them because that's where the best work comes out.
One last quick note here. Erica was one of the most fascinating leaders I've talked to yet. And she's in the chapter on complexity capacity. So as you listen to the closing, don't get distracted. She adds one more complexity to her life as she continues to lead in the community. That last statement, I agree with you 100%. Last question. You are in the midst of a lot of hard, important work. And the decade ahead has a ton of challenges in front of us. Erica, do you feel optimistic? Do you feel pessimistic? Somewhere in between? What's your mindset about the years ahead? How are you feeling about it?
I'm always optimistic, about the years ahead. My kids are going to be doing stuff in the years ahead, in the next 10 years. My 18-year-old will be 28. I got an 8-year-old, 11-year-old, a new 4 and 2-year-old. So I'm optimistic that I am hopefully modeling the kind of non-complacency and the kind of, I guess, idea of, how you make change where it needs to happen, that they are picking up on it. I'm not like training I don't have like a little military training like class at home for the kids. But what? I just hope that they, my hope is that they pick it up through just live with me, just through my actions, just listening to me in meetings like this, just showing up at events with me because I do take them out, and that, that they take their own path, but that they have this kind of spark in them that, when something needs to be done, they have no doubt that they can do it or be a part of doing it.
We had 3 kids. The notion of at your stage, taking on 2 new foster kids that are 2 and 4 years old, that takes enormous courage.
It does. But you know what? It needed to happen. The goal is to adopt them hopefully by the end of the summer. And, they're babies. So I love babies. And I have 5 boys. Babies
need people like you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time, Erica. just sort of expand my mind about what leadership means and the breadth and the depth of it, given the way that you take it on. So thank you so much for spending the time with me today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Rebuilders Podcast. For more information, resources, and episodes, visit paulshoemaker.org. That's paulshoemaker.org.